Do you remember this? Or this? Or this? I've always thought that these were the glory days of bodybuilding and physical development in general. A time when size, it didn't come at the expense of aesthetics and a V-taper, which looks like it's straight out of the comics, like something similar to Superman or Batman or you name it. Even to this day, names like Frank Zane, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and Lee Haney, these guys are synonymous with this belief that proportion and aesthetics should never be sacrificed in the pursuit of just pure muscle mass. And that is where the vacuum comes in. In all of bodybuilding, fitness, you name it, I feel no other single pose embodies these principles more than the vacuum. It is without a doubt one of the most difficult and impressive poses an individual can perform. If you're overweight, or you've simply let your waistline go, then chances are you will not be able to execute this pose properly. Bodybuilding. Seriously, what the fuck is that? That being said, if you're on the other side of the spectrum, proudly supporting a slim 28-inch waist, but it's only because you weigh 130 pounds, you've been training for a grand total of 3 months, and you haven't got an ounce of muscle on your entire frame, then you too probably can't execute this pose properly. To put it bluntly, you're not gonna do this pose without being 3 things: jacked, lean, and experienced. And that is where this video comes in. I can't help you put on 20 pounds of muscle or drop 3 inches off your waistline in the span of one 10-minute video, but I can give you the skills required to be your own personal version of a Frank Zane.
Like, for instance, so many of those guys have their stomachs sticking out. You know, what are we talking about here? I mean, it used to be that you should have a V-shaped body. Now, I don't know, it's like kind of like a bottle-shaped body or something like that. But it's not, it's a kind of, it's a weird thing that is happening on stage, that no one can pull in their stomach anymore for a long period of time and stand on stage with a vacuum and pulled in stomach, shoulders out, and to look athletic.
So, when it comes to the vacuum, surprisingly, it's not actually that crazy. This is not something where you have to be some incredible bodybuilder with 10 years of experience. You just need a proper strategy. And the overall main goal is simply contract what you can and minimize the size of everything else. Let me explain. Starting with step 1, train your diaphragm. So the diaphragm is a muscle that not many people actually know. Where it sits is between your abdominal and thoracic cavities. Your thoracic cavity is kind of just like a way of generalizing and saying your overall upper trunk. We're talking about like your lungs and heart, that area. And your abdominal cavities, as the name implies, is near your abdominal abs, six-pack area. We're talking like your stomach, kidneys, liver, overall the lower portion of your trunk. The diaphragm is this big muscle. It's kind of like a wall which sits in between these two abdominal cavities. It's this big, beautiful wall. The best wall. Guys, you're gonna love this wall.
Believe me, it is.
So when you contract your diaphragm, it actually enlarges your thoracic cavity and reduces pressure. When this happens, your lungs naturally expand as they inhale air. On the other hand, when you exhale, your diaphragm relaxes, and other muscles such as your abdominals and your intercostals, they contract. However, if you were to actually hold your breath and attempt to inhale via diaphragm contraction, the result is your abdominal cavity becoming smaller, making room for your, what it thinks is going to be an increasing thoracic cavity, but it never actually does this because you are holding your breath. The resulting effect is a tiny abdominal cavity and a proper vacuum pose. And fortunately, just like any other muscle, you can train your diaphragm. Personally for me, before I could really do the vacuum pose very well, I used to do something very simple. I would lean over like a table or a bench or something. It makes the whole process a little bit simpler. And then I would do something like forced contractions and maybe do something as little as 10 repetitions holding this vacuum kind of pose for about 5 seconds. And I would do this pretty much every day. And honestly, I personally felt an increased ability to control and contract my diaphragm in as little as a few weeks. The second piece of advice is very simple, but something that a lot of times people forget, and that is simply to fully exhale. If your lungs are inflated, that means your diaphragm is already contracted. And 9 times out of 10, a contracted muscle typically can't contract anymore. So make sure to fully exhale before attempting this pose. That being said, guys, be careful because posing, it's not that easy with you standing there like, looking like you're about to pop and trying to flex all the muscles in your body, especially if you're trying to do this with essentially no air or oxygen in your body. I can personally only hold the vacuum pose for about 5 or 10 seconds before I start to feel a little lightheaded. The third piece of advice is simply put, the leaner the better. And this is something that you can't necessarily activate, is just the general piece of advice. Unfortunately, fat, especially visceral fat, the kind of fat that kind of sits around your general midsection as opposed to subcutaneous fat, which is kind of all over your body, this will make it very difficult because you can't suck it in. Remember, the overall goal is to contract what you can and minimize everything else. Well, unlike muscle, you cannot contract fat. It's simply dead weight in the way of a proper vacuum. That being said, the good news is that you don't have to be absolutely shredded to do this pose. Even at a healthy and normal body fat percentage, for example, in the footage you guys are seeing right now of me, I'm probably around 14-15% body fat. I'm not, shredded or lean by any means, but I'm definitely not fat on the other hand, and I could still do a pretty decent vacuum shot. As long as you're not holding something like 20 pounds of fat in a beer gut, you should be okay. And finally, the last tip is more so optional, but I guarantee it will help. You should try this pose when you are fasting or when you haven't had a big meal in the last few hours. Again, we're trying to minimize the volume of your abdominal cavity, and you having 3 pounds worth of Burger King in there, yeah, it's not gonna make this process easy. Guys, I guarantee you, this is one of the reasons why I think like 90% of the, fitness social media people out there, when they do their physique updates or like shredded Instagram photos, they're probably doing them in the morning before they've actually had anything to eat. It makes your overall abdominal cavity in your waist a lot tighter just due to the lack of physical volume of food. And guys, that's it. It's really not that hard. Follow these 4 simple steps and I'm sure you'll be on your way to hitting an awesome vacuum pose that even modern world-class bodybuilders, I think, they're gonna be a little jealous.
Let's see one more double bicep shot with a great vacuum. Show them now how to do that. Watch this, guys. Watch this, guys. What is?